Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Jam Vishnupat Param Sivarashkacharya Shlottara Shatta Sivangare Savacharanda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantara Chimba Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitya Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, text 14. So today is starting the World's Holy Name Week here in Sydney, organized by Dear Prashanta Prabhu. So thank you, Prabhu, for doing that. So for 1 week we are not continuing with the usual Bhagavatam verses, where we are in the 7th chapter of the 2nd canto, but now we are reading verses on the Holy Name from Bhagavatam itself as well. So today, text 14 from Canto 1, Chapter 1. Apanna samsmitim garam. Apanna samsmritim garam. Yannama vivashokrinan. Yannama vivashokrinan. Tatta sadyo vimuchyata. Tatta sadyo vimuchyata. Yat pibeti svayambhayam. Yat pibeti svayambhavam. Apanna samsmritim garam. Yannama vivashokrinan. Tatta sadyo vimuchyata. Yat pibeti svayambhayam. Apanna samsmritim garam. Yannama vivashokrinan. Tatta sadyo vimuchyata. Yat pibeti svayambhayam. Word to word. Apannaha, being entangled. Samsmritim, in the hurdle of birth and death. Garam, too complicated. Yat, what? Nama, the absolute name. Vivashaha, unconsciously. Krinan, chanting. Tattaha, from that. Sadyaha, at once. Vimuchyata, gets freedom. Yat, that which. Pibeti, fears. Svayam, personally. Bhayam, fear itself. Translation and purport by Isvaresvara Dasa and the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. Purport. Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is the supreme controller of everything, and as such he is feared by all others. There is no one in creation who is not afraid of the rage of the Almighty. Great asuras like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others, who were very powerful living entities, were all killed by the personality of Godhead. And the Almighty Vasudeva has empowered his name with the powers of his personal self. Everything directly related to him is identical with him. It is stated herein that the name of Krishna is feared even by fear personified. This indicates that the name of Krishna is none different from Krishna. Therefore, the name of Krishna is as powerful as Lord Krishna himself. There is no difference at all. Anyone, therefore, can take advantage of the holy names of Lord Sri Krishna, even in the midst of the greatest dangers. The transcendental name of Krishna, even though uttered unconsciously or by force of circumstances, can help one obtain freedom from the hurdle of birth and death. Om Jnanatimirandasya Grananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Putale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadate Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridhirana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpadarubhasya Kripa Sindhyubha Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhya Vaishnavebhya Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we're starting 1 week where we try to, I guess, go a bit deeper in our inspiration for our main duty, for chanting the holy name of Krishna. So, and we start off in this first canto where, so switching from the scene of Lord Brahma speaking to Narad Muni, which we every morning were recently hearing. Now we go back to first chapter, first canto of the assembly of the sages as Naimisharanya. And so Shonaka Rishi exclaims here some of the glories of the holy name. Of course we know the holy name is, as we hear in this purport, it's absolutely none different from Krishna himself. So his glories are unlimited as well as of the Lord himself. Like actually we just last 2 classes we heard on that on the there from Lord Brahma as well about the Lord, how the glories of the Lord are unlimited, so that even Lord Anantashesh cannot, since time immemorial, trying to tell all those glories, but still not able to finish them. So so we know the same, of course, applies also to the holy name, but we can only try to meditate a bit on some of those glories to deepen our attachment to chanting sincerely and seriously. And in this verse it's basically so like one glory that is many times told about the holy name, which is actually a kind of a side effect only. We know ultimately, most importantly, by chanting the holy name, Cheto Darpanamajanam, as we every day say in Shikshashtakam, that it cleanses our heart and ultimately awakens our pure love for Krishna, as expressed in the Shikshashtakam by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But so as on the way, it also thus automatically relieves us from all the material entanglements, and which we hear in today's verse, and in many other places, it's like especially for non-devotees, that's very bewildering. That even simply chanting the holy name can even simply relieve you from all the sins, which so it's the best form of atonement, but it's much more than that, of course. But it's way superior to any other ordinary, mundane forms of atonement for sins. So, in the first part of the purport, Srila Prabhupada focuses on that, on the fact that the holy name is none different from the Lord, and that the Lord, just as the Lord is the controller of everything, is all-powerful, and so, thus as we hear in today's verse, in the same way, that's also why then even fear personified fears the holy name of Krishna. So simply the unlimited power of the holy name, fully invested, as we hear in today's purport, with all the potencies of the Lord Himself. And we hear like that's a phenomenon we know of, we hear in even in Bhagavad Gita itself, and where Arjuna sees the universal form of Krishna, and in many other places that that's how Krishna, he's a person, but he's not an ordinary person like us, whom we are very limited to relate to another person and to other living entities, whereas Krishna, he can do so completely perfectly with all living entities, unlimited in number, and in different ways. So according to our consciousness, we perceive the Lord in different ways. And so for devotees, obviously, seeing Krishna, hearing of Krishna, hearing His holy name in any way associating with Him, gives us a feeling of shelter, of security, of peace, and of bliss, and all those much more ecstatic emotions if we are more advanced. But whereas for demons, non-devotees, as we hear here, they fear the Lord. I remember in one class, I think was it Toshin Krishna, I can't remember, but then it was told there that the reason, like with Lord Nrsingadev, so the Lord's form was the most fierce form, where everyone was afraid except Prahlad Maharaj, and heard the reason is because even all the demigods, even though they are devotees, but they still hold on to some material desires that they still want to enjoy separately from the Lord as well. And they know that, and so in their heart they still have fear, because this material desires are demonic, because it means that you still want to be the controller of the material nature, you want to lord it over, you want to exploit, and that is asuric. And so because of that, they also, even though Lord Nrsingadev came to rescue them, to kill the demon that they were so suffering so much under, Hiranyakashipu, that they still had some had fear from the Lord as well. Whereas Prahlad Maharaj, 5-year-old boy, pure devotee, of course he was completely fearless, because his only desire was to please the Lord, and he didn't have any separate desire. So that's how. Then of course also here, fear personified fears the holy name. And so everything directly related to Him is identical with Him. So we know that the Lord is absolute, so there is no question of rather in contrast to us, we know for any material thing, like Prabhupada gives a famous example with the mango. If you chant mango, mango, you won't get you won't get the taste of mango. You might get, because simply of our prior experience, that we remember how the mango tastes. So we might, by chanting, we might remember and somehow relate to it a bit, but we can't really taste mango simply by chanting mango, or we can't see it or anything. Whereas with the Lord, His name, His paraphernalia, His pastimes, everything is absolute, and absolute means that that you can get the full experience of the Lord in any of these forms. So, yeah, that is the amazing thing, which is, of course, inconceivable for our material senses, but that's the great mercy of the Lord for, especially now in this age, making Himself so readily available for us to associate with Him, and thus to become purified and awaken our bhakti for the Lord. And then Prabhupada concludes the purport with telling that the transcendental name of Krishna, even though uttered unconsciously or by force of circumstances, can help one obtain freedom from the hurdle of birth and death. So, we know, of course, the most famous example from Srimad Bhagavatam itself about how someone gets saved by the holy name, even though chanted unconsciously or by force of circumstances, as we hear here, is that of Achamil in 6th canto. So we'll briefly meditate some of the points that we learn from there. And so briefly background, we know that at the end of 5th canto, Maharaj Parikshit, after hearing all the description of the whole universe, concluding then with the hellish planets, he feels transcendentally disturbed, because he feels, oh wow, all those sinful living entities, how greatly they have to suffer, what is the remedy for them, because he knows, or I mean, of course he knows it anyway, but for our benefit and to for the world to make it very clear, he puts forth then like the argument or the statement that all those people in general, they think, okay, they commit, those who are at least a bit God-fearing, God-conscious, that of sin and of pious activities and karma and all of that, okay, if I commit sinful activities, so I have to do some atonement, otherwise I have to suffer a lot after. So they do some Vedic rituals and different prayashchitta, different atonements to get rid of their sins. But Maharaj Parikshit knows and feels compassion upon them that, well, that is not a real solution, because it's simply just like, famous example, like the elephant goes nicely bathing into the river, and then as soon as he comes out on the riverbank, he just takes the sand and throws it onto his body. So in the same way, those atonements, they relieve you from some suffering that you had accrued, but it doesn't relieve you fully, because you simply then, if you don't purify your heart, then you still have the inclination to again commit the sinful activities, and then of course you have to suffer those. And of course also, as long as you don't fully purify your heart, then you will also always go on in the cycle of birth and death, and naturally, material life, you'll also always encounter some suffering, even if you act piously. So yeah, that's how then Shukadeva Goswami starts the 6th canto of giving this famous example of Achamil, of how a most sinful person got saved simply by the holy name. And yeah, we know the story that Achamil actually was a highly qualified brahmana, but then one day when he saw an uncommon scene at that time of out on the street, someone kissing each other, or a sin which aroused his lower nature of desiring to engage in illicit affairs, and so he gave up his qualified wife, didn't take care of his parents, nothing, and gave up all his Brahminical culture, and married a prostitute and begot many children with her and all of that. We know the story, and that then at his last son, when Chamal, I think he was like something like 82 years older, so when he got his last child. So from that we see how much sinful activities he must have done all those years, like for his maintenance. He did criminal acts as well, like stealing or those kinds of things. And so but so fortunately, because the Lord wanted to show his mercy upon him, for previously he had done some devotional service in his early life, so he inspired him to name his youngest son as Narayan, and and thus not only at the last moment of this life, but even during the time, it's explained that because it was his youngest son, so naturally he had most affection for him, and so very affectionately he always used to call out to his son Narayan. So in that way, actually, the Acharyas explained that even before, so during all this time, like all his sinful erections already had been eradicated. I mean, actually, it said like even chanting the holy name once relieves you from all sinful reactions. So this shows getting relief of sinful reactions is only a very small side benefit of chanting the holy name. And so I'll just pick out a few of the verses of the second chapter in 6th canto. What I saw, I think then in another class there's going to be spoken on the something from the third chapter. I would guess that's then maybe when the Yamadutas go back to Yamaraj and he explained some of the glories of the holy name to them. But so today we'll just go through the second chapter, where Shukadeva Goswami is speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, and so some of the we'll start with text 11. Text 8, or what is here? So in text 8, the Vishnudutas, they explained to the Yamadutas. So that was after we know when the Yamadutas would have come to take Ajamil to Yamaraj, when at that time then the Vishnudutas came and forbade them, and the Yamadutas were bewildered, but the Vishnudutas explained to them then how some of the glories of the holy name, why they are not allowed to take him. And so in text 8 they explained, like I said, that he already before even would always call his son Narayan, my dear Narayan, please come here, and so while eating and all of those times. And they conclude that verse by saying that in this way he sufficiently atoned for the sinful erections of millions of lives. So which like I said shows simply a minor glory of the holy name, of that it's not a big deal at all for the holy name to relieve of sinful reactions, which of course doesn't mean that we should, as one of the offenses against the holy name, that we should commit sinful reactions on strength of the holy name. We know in that case of Achamil it was not the case. It was rather that he, even though he led such a sinful life, and even though previously he was a qualified Brahmana, so he would have had the knowledge, but he just completely fell down from his Brahminical position, and just was then became ignorant of all that he had learned, and just engaged in all of that. And when he named his son Narayan, he didn't have any attention. Hey, now now I cheat Lord Narayan, now I continue my sinful activities, but automatically chant his holy name and get free from all the sins that I did all my life. He didn't think like that. He did it innocently in that sense, and that's why how he got relieved, and how then we see also that we see that also reflected, because after that he actually sincerely regrets, and that's how he then can take up bhakti fully, and that's how he perfected his life then after all of that. So then in text 9 and 10 we can understand how where they give different examples, the Vishnudutas, of all different kinds of sinful activities or sinful people, that even all of them get relieved. And so no matter how sinful we are, the Lord, they conclude by explaining that it is like that the Lord himself feels that no matter how sinful this man was, as soon as someone chants his holy name, the Lord feels immediately, oh, wow, this person chanted my holy name, so I have to protect him. He immediately feels obliged to become the guard of this person, or the ward. And that's how amazingly merciful the Lord is. And so that was then further in text 11, then they explain, as we mentioned before, the contrast to any other forms of atonement, that all these other Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, they don't really purify the heart, and that's the problem, because we know that only temporarily you get relieved from the sinful actions, whereas the holy name, Cetotatparnamachanam, it cleanses our heart, and thus it uproots those sinful desires. And that's like a very powerful explanation, and how we can justify also when atheistic people might challenge, like, how come it can't be so easy, and it's not fair that if someone commits like grievous sins, like, so let's say he murders someone or he rapes someone, and whatever worst sins that we can think of, when this person then at some point starts to chant the holy name, and then he should be relieved of those sins, seems unfair. But the point is that the holy name is not different from Krishna, and is so powerful that it actually uproots all the material desires, including this very sinful desire that was there, or that led us to commit that sin. And so that's the only way how you can really be relieved from, why would you not forgive someone if that person completely gave up his very inclination or anything to do with what he had previously to commit that sin? If he just has given it up fully to the core of his heart. So, but that's what the holy name does, and that's why it is fair also when you can say that one from any kind of sin, that one gets relieved by chanting the holy name. Of course, it doesn't mean that to chant it offensively, like to chant it only casually and think, okay, now I'm free, and not let it enter to really cleanse this very root desire of the sin. If we hold on to those sinful desires, then of course, then the purification doesn't fully take place. So of course, it's not a mechanical thing. But the holy name is unlimitedly powerful, but it's for the persons individually to whether they allow the holy name to really cleanse the heart or not. So that's about how the Vedic rituals cannot really help us, whereas the holy name completely frees us. And they conclude that also, like, one natural effect of chanting the holy name is that it reminds us of the Lord's fame, qualities, attributes, pastimes, and paraphernalia. and that again brings us to the point that chanting the holy name is directly associating with the Lord. Like we know that all those, not only the holy name, but also his paraphernalia, pastimes, qualities, they're all non-different from the Lord. So coming in contact with any of that is directly associating with the Lord. And for that, where was that? I'll come back to that later. But so then further in text 12, they explain further about the atonement, that how they are insufficient, and and state the reason that because if you don't have the root desire cleansed, then naturally the contaminated mind, it again runs toward those same material activities. And whereas in contrast to chanting, which is Ceto Darpana Vachanam, which really cleanses the mirror of the heart, as we say every morning, and which thus enables us to actually, like mirror of the heart means if it's clean, then you can see the reflection of your own self. You can actually see your own self as being the servant of the Lord, of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. And then in text 14 they then exclaim the glory of that, from you get freed from directions of unlimited sins, even if chanted indirectly, which means to indicate something else. So like in that case that he actually wanted to called his son, who happened to have the name Narayan, or jokingly, or for musical entertainment, or even neglectfully. So as long as it's not as long as you don't willfully commit sins on the strength of the holy name, or any of those other offenses, if you only, so to say, like it's even neglectfully. So even if someone, like a non-devotee, chants and doesn't have any respect for Krishna, for the holy name, but still if he's just ignorant and doesn't say, okay, now I chant and on that strength I commit sins, still he gets some benefit, still he gets purified. Because that's then, chanting neglectfully, for example. Or if someone, for musical entertainment, if someone, like back then when those songs of the Beatles were popular, when they were chanting Hare Krishna, recording, then many people didn't have any idea about it, most likely. So they simply would have heard it, not even thinking about it all, and heard the holy name in that way simply as entertainment, but still they also got purified. So, and then in text 15 we come to where they explain that in any kind of accident that you might have, and you happen to chant the holy name, you will get ultimately saved. So then if someone dies because of an accidental misfortune, such as falling from the top of a house, slipping and suffering broken bones while traveling on the road, bitten by a serpent, being afflicted with pain and high fear, being injured by a weapon, one is immediately absolved from having to enter hellish life, even though he is sinful. So whole life sinful, if you somehow happen helplessly then to call out the holy name, then that person gets saved. And and we know in the case of Achamil, it was even, as I said, even before in his life, many times he called already his son Narayan, so he got purified. And then at the last moment, because he was most attached to his son, so he very fervently, called out to his son helplessly when he was about to die. And that's considered pure chanting, because it was in a helpless position and it was not willingly offensive. So that's why he got then the fortune of getting the association of pure devotees of the Vishnudutas, and because of that association then he was able to fully take up bhakti and perfect his life. And So that's then Ajamal himself explains then at like in text 39 when we hear, what was 34, 45? Yeah, so first let's start with Ajamil. After he was, because of having chanted like that, he got purified, and he this enabled them to, like I mentioned, to sincerely realize his mistake and his, like, how sinful he was, and how sincerely regret that. And thus he exclaimed, for example, in text 44, that I am a shameless cheater who has killed this Brahmanical culture. Indeed, I am sin personified. Where am I in comparison to the all-auspicious chanting of the holy name of Lord Narayana? So he took in his humility here the angle rather that, like, how can it be? How does the holy name come to me? How does the holy name save me when I am so sinful? Like, whereas the holy name is all pure, all powerful, all merciful. And so then he continues that I'm such a sinful person, but since I have now gotten this opportunity, I must completely control my mind, life and senses, and always engage in devotional service, so that I may not fall again into the deep darkness and ignorance of material life. So it enabled him to get to this determination of, okay, I don't deserve it, that the holy name, the Lord, his devotees, the Vishnu Dutas saved me, but out of their causeless mercy they did it, so at least let me take advantage of it, or like acknowledge it by giving up all the sinful life and completely engaging myself for the pleasure of the Lord. So then in text 39 he admits also again the importance of devotee association. Even though holy name, yes, it's all powerful, but to really be able to take full advantage of it, generally speaking, we need also the association of devotees. So he's saying that because of a moment's association with devotees, namely the Vishnu Dutas, Ajamil detached himself from the material conception of life with determination. Thus, freed from all material attraction, he immediately started for hard work. So that's now Shukadeva Goswami speaking again, explaining that because he got the association of the Vishnu Dutas, he got fully detached from all the sinful life that he had led until that point, and with full determination was able to leave everything behind, go to hard work, and there it's explained he took shelter at a Vishnu temple where he executed the process of bhakti yoga. He controlled his senses and fully applied his mind in the service of the Lord. And thus he, at the end of that life, then he went back to Godhead. Like sometimes people who don't fully read or hear the story from Bhagavatam, they might think it was just Ajamil was a sinful person, then he chanted somehow by hook or crook once and immediately was taken back to Godhead. It's not like that actually, as we hear here. He then fully engaged in devotional service for many years. I don't know how many years, and went back to Godhead from there. It's actually then the Vishnu Dutas, it's explained when he was about to say something to them, they immediately left from that place, and the next time he saw them was then at Hardwar itself, and he had perfected his life when he was leaving his body then. And of course we know actually he was meant to leave his body at that time already when the Yamadutas came, but by the mercy of the Lord, of the devotees, the holy name, he then prolonged his life and used it fully for devotional service. And then Shukadeva Goswami concludes with a quite famous text, 46 then, which I memorized it's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I can't remember where, but it goes, Mriyamano Haryanama Krinan Putra Pacharitam Achamilo Apyakatama Kimata Shradaya Krinan. Where Shukadeva Goswami explains that, like in his ecstasy after telling the story of Acharmil to Maharaj Parikshit, he exclaims like how even though Mriyamano Haryanama, so Mriyamano while dying, actually Acharmil was dying at that time, but he happened to chant the holy name of Hari, of Narayan, and so Mriyamano Haryanama Krinam Putra Upacharitam. But actually Putra Upacharitam, he chanted to indicating his son, to call his son Narayan. Still, nevertheless, Acharmil Dhamma, still he attained the abode of the Lord. And so, thus then, Shukadeva Goswami in the last line, he pricks us. So, then, take up this chanting, so to say, he tells, so, Kimota Shradana Karinan, so what to speak if someone chants with awe and reverence the holy name of the Lord? How much benefit shall we get if we sincerely chant the holy name? So, yeah, that's how that chapter concludes, and not much time left. So, we'll just briefly mention a few points from, currently I'm reading the third canto, so I was reading the pastime of the four Kumaras, cursing Jaya Vichaya, and then the pastime of Lord Varadev killing Hiranyaksha. And so in one of these verses, in the end of the 19th chapter, Sutta Goswami tells the Falashruti for hearing Lord Varadev killing Hiranyaksha. And so he tells her that by hearing that you get relieved of any sinful reactions, even of killing of a brahmana, which which is considered the most sinful activity. So that's why we also glorify Tulsi Marani every morning when we circumambulate her, that by her mercy we also can get relieved from such sins. And there Srila Prabhupada also explains that the reason how it can be that simply by hearing the Lord's pastimes we can get relieved from those sins. And he says, because, as we mentioned before, again the point that hearing the Lord's pastimes, hearing the holy name, means to directly associate with the Lord, and thus the Lord being all powerful, all pure, thus certainly we get relieved from all sinful activities. And as said, not only from the reactions, but from the very root, from desire to commit such. And I'll just briefly mention the last 2 minutes that in another purport there, 3.15.25, Srila Prabhupada explains there the word pulakashru from the verse, which means pulaka means happiness, and ashru means tears in the eyes. So that's mentioned in several places that actually by chanting the holy name, one naturally, immediately would exhibit all the ecstatic symptoms, and like pulakashru. So you would, that's one of them. In ecstasy, tears, you would have tears in the eyes, and if you don't have that, then that means as we know that we commit offenses against the holy name. And Srila Prabhupada there mentions the remedy as being to take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and of the holy name. As we know, there is no access for us to anything in Krishna consciousness, and of course also especially not the holy name without the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so, I would have loved to share a pastime from Mahaprabhu as well, but running out of time now. So we know how can we take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu means that we have to serve his pure devotee whom he had sent, Srila Prabhupada, Senapati, who he gave his everything to serve the holy name. And we know his mood was always not to glorify those who imitate Haridas Thakur by just sitting down and chanting apparently the whole day, but rather to give Of course, to chant our rounds, our prescribed number of rounds as given by the spiritual master, which Prabhupada did for us with 16 rounds. But otherwise, give our heart and soul to give the holy name to others, and thus we can become a real servant of the holy name, and our own chanting, of course, will then be much better as well. And because it's a matter of mercy, of course, we can only by the gaining the favor of the spiritual master and thus of the Lord, we can actually chant inoffensively and thus awaken pure love for the Lord. Okay, I'll conclude here. Thank you. Krantarachima Bhagavatam Ke Jai.